everybody, all of our guests and our guest, and well, two guests. I see Thomas Jefferson up there and Dr. Lorraine Mangione. Welcome to the Rare Book Cafe, the coffee break edition, the book lovers rendezvous. And as I do every week, and sometimes a couple of times a week, rendezvousing with my co-host, Linn. Bonjour.
Good morning, good afternoon. I think we're all in the same time zone today.
The other thing is this show started on time. You know, hey everybody, we normally record at 9 o'clock or 12 o'clock Eastern time on Wednesdays, and I'm looking at 9:01. We've never done this before.
Maybe we're learning how to do this.
And my guest, my special guest, Lorraine Mangione, author of the book Mary Climbs In. The interesting thing is, Lorraine and I went to high school together, Lee.
That's what I understand.
I won't say how many years ago, so I don't embarrass her, but we were very close friends in high school. We were co-editors of our high school yearbook edition.
Oh, wow.
Welcome, Lorraine.
Thank you, and I want to say it was an amazing yearbook, and if you want to highlight that on your Rare Book Cafe, we could do that too.
I think one thing we both learned from that experience is how to cooperate with people, kind of Republicans, Democrats, left, right, whatever you want to say. But Lorraine and I learned how to communicate peacefully.
Was there any
Except for that one time you threw a pie at me.
Was there any reason you shouldn't have cooperated peacefully?
Well, Lorraine, we love having authors on this show because that's where it begins. We're putting pencil to paper, putting fingers to keyboard, and we don't get many nonfiction authors, do we, Lee?
No, we don't. We don't.
But we've got someone else on the screen here. Before we dive in too deeply, Lorraine, what is Thomas Jefferson doing here? All right, folks, he happens to be here because I just wanted to share with you one of my finds, pickups this past week. A July 13th, 1813 National Intelligencer newspaper, 4 pages, and up in the top right-hand corner is written Thomas, the abbreviation for Thomas, T-H-O, Jefferson. Now that looks a lot like Thomas Jefferson handwriting, but it is actually probably most likely from the subscription clerk of the newspaper. Now, Lee and Lorraine, imagine if you will, the morning of July 13th, 1813, Thomas Jefferson sitting on the back of Monticello in his Adirondack chair, sipping on a cup of Panera coffee.
I'm sure.
So where would he have been in 1813?
He would have been in Monticello.
He would have been in Monticello.
Yeah.
And
so what happened when he passed away in 1829, his son had auctioned off everything, and there was a lot, which means a group of newspapers that were auctioned to somebody in New Orleans. And then they were broken up over the years, and the last record I have of this one, it was purchased in a charity auction in Alexandria, Virginia in 1957, and I have no provenance in between those two dates, but it's a fun thing to own, isn't it?
Where did you find it?
From the person who bought it at the charity auction in
goodness.
1957.
Wow.
Yeah, and in Thomas Jefferson's auction records, there was a lot of newspapers, so
Right.
we go back to that.
Wow.
I've had fun reading it with my morning coffee.
Do you have coffee this morning? I actually have coffee today.
Well, I did. I'm at a Panera because I needed a place to get internet. By the way, there's a young 16-year-old assistant manager at the counter. I spoke to him about becoming the sponsor of the Rare Book Cafe Coffee Break Edition, and he seemed real positive. He said he talked to his manager about it. I gave him my card, so who knows? We may have a new sponsor soon.
Did he give you free coffee?
No, I pay $8.99 a month for unlimited coffee.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay. All right, our guest, Lorraine Mangione, Mary Climbs In, and her co-host, Donna Luff. First of all, Lorraine, who is Mary and what is she climbing into?
So, Mary is a name that is often used in Bruce Springsteen's work. She kind of goes through it. She winds through his work. The Mary in this particular case who is climbing in is from Thunder Road, one of his early songs from the Born to Run album, that both Donna, if she were here, both Donna and I would say is his single best, most important song, and the one that resonates with us totally for how many years now? 45 years. So in the song Thunder Road, the young man is trying to get Mary to go with him on his journey in the car, on his life journey, trying to be companions. And so we kind of use it as a metaphor, does Mary climb in at the end? Does she not go with him? And in this, we're saying, we're using that as a metaphor for all the women fans, because the second half of the title is about the journey of Springsteen's women fans. So we are all the fans who have climbed in for the journey that he talks about in Thunder Road. So some of the fans who see the book might get that illusion right away, and other people are not. But we were hoping it would be kind of like, oh, what's this about? What does it mean to climb in? Where are you going? And if you know Springsteen and his whole obsession, especially in the earlier days, with cars and being on the road, etc., the journey is a wonderful metaphor on so many levels.
Lorraine, before we go any further, I want to sit your bona fide. Everybody, Lorraine was the valedictorian of our high school class, over 500 students. She's a real smarty pants. She went on and got a PhD in psychology. She's a clinical psychologist and an academician in New England, well known and well published. How did that prepare you for writing this book, and what did you do and incorporate?
So I've always felt that psychology needs to get beyond psychology and needs to get beyond the academic world and beyond the mental health world and think about what real people do. So that's always been a theme in my work. How do we talk about what real people do in the world, and how does it relate to psychology, and how does psychology relate to that? So in that sense, given how important Springsteen has been to me and to many of my friends, it wasn't a far move to say, what about psychology in Springsteen? And I have to give credit to, there are some people down at Monmouth University in New Jersey who started, I know you're not going to believe this, but the Springsteen Symposia. There actually have been a couple of conferences, which stopped with the pandemic, hopefully we'll get back to them, where scholars and other people who are interested in Springsteen and want to talk about him at a deeper level come together, and those have been really fascinating. So that also helped encourage me to do this. But I see psychology everywhere. So you mentioned high school, and yes, I was valedictorian. That was wonderful. But one of the other really important things in high school is that I read the book by Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning. Mm-hmm. And I was about 15. It's about his experiences in the concentration camp in World War II. And he's a big name in psychology. He's now passed away. But as some of our other friends from high school have reminded me, I announced in about 10th grade that I was going to be a psychologist, and it was from reading that book. And that book so touched me and, brought in World War II, brought in existentialism, brought in some very personal stuff that Viktor Frankl and others had gone through. So I've just always had this idea that psychology belongs everywhere, and certainly belongs in thinking about Springsteen. Yes, even with Bruce.
Lee, were you a Springsteen fan?
I liked Springsteen a lot. I was in high school. Now I'm about 10 years older than y'all are. And so in high school, it was AM radio, pop music. After college, and in college, it was folk music, Pete Seeger, Arlo Guthrie, Woody Guthrie, Joan Baez, people like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when my husband and I started dating, he was really into classic country music. And I really got, of course, I was courted with Bob Dylan, particularly Nashville Skyline. And I think that this psychology idea is something you can apply to a lot of songwriters and singers. I certainly can apply it to Dylan. You can even apply it, like we've always been big fans of Jerry Jeff Walker, and some of his songs lend you to a psychological, interpretation as well. So while I like Springsteen, I was not married, to put it that way. But I like all kinds of music and still listen to all kinds of music.
Well, you use the word music a lot.
Yeah.
Lorraine, does Bruce Springsteen's lyrics stand alone without the music and the concerts and the sexy chest and the tchotchkes? As a poet, is he deserved of the reputation?
So, both in my mind and from many of our fans who participated, because we actually did do 2 large surveys, so these aren't just our ideas, these are fans' ideas. They do really hold on to lyrics, and I almost think, even though certain people, they certainly mention the concerts and how incredible they are, and they mention the music, they mention Clarence Clemens with his saxophone when he was still with us. But I almost think in some ways we don't give enough credit to the music itself, and that it's more the lyrics that women mention more often and hold in their head. I often quote lyrics, and my latest one is, "It ain't no sin to be glad you're alive," which I think is really important during this time of our country and our world and everything going on. But so I think the lyrics are very important, but I also think if it were just the lyrics, they would not have heard them so well. That the music really helps them to hear it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Well, I think it does. Good melodic poetry, whether it's Shelley or Byron or Dr. Seuss, is going to fill you sometimes with the same joy as musical notes.
Well, when we were talking about this the other day about poetry, and I said that I think a lot of young people get out of high school or college never wanting to read another poem, but music makes that genre important to them again, and poetry, if it's rhyming or if it is a metered, poetry, then you get that rhythm, you get the sense of a beat, you get the sense of a musicality, even if it isn't set specifically to music. And I don't sing. I have a terrible voice, but I like to, and so I can sing along with something and not worry about whether it's exact or not, because I like the sound, I like the beat, I like the sound of the poetry. So I think the poetry is very important in a lot of music.
Lorraine, geographically, how far dispersed was your research, your interviews, however you collected the data?
We had done some initial interviews, but then the data were collected from online surveys, and I never got this number right, but from almost every state and 22 other countries.
Wow.
Because Europe and particularly Australia are real. There's a lot of fans. The countries are listed in there at some point. I could find it, but it was pretty international. And this summer, Bruce was in Europe, and this didn't just happen. Although I do have relatives in Italy, we were going to visit, but we made sure we visited at the time that Bruce was in Rome, and my family, there was a group of about 8 or 9 of us, saw Bruce in Rome, which was pretty amazing. I'd never done that before. I'd never gone out of the country to see him. But it certainly took in a wide swath. And what also interested me, in Rome, a lot of British people came down. I mean, it's not that far really, but British people were everywhere to go to the concert. And my husband,
Sterling is $19 for a ticket, and
right.
$72 if you want to bring it back.
My husband and daughter said, or my daughter's like, Mama, you don't have to like stalk all these people that are wearing Springsteen T-shirts, because suddenly in Rome, everybody's wearing a Springsteen T-shirt. So anyway, it was quite an event.
Well, Bob Dylan received his well-deserved Nobel Prize for Literature. I would imagine at the Springsteen Symposium, there's an underground campaign to make him the next lyrical recipient.
I have not ever heard that, and that would be very interesting to think about now that you mention it.
Yeah. That was
So-
one thing that came to my mind when I heard you were coming on, because of Dylan, that might be a real possibility. Another thing that I thought about is you and Bruce have aged together. What effect has that had on your being a fan? Has he grown with you, so to speak? Do you see changes from the time you first heard him and now that are reflective of an increase in maturity on either of your parts?
Oh, he's not stagnant at all. And I think that's what happens with some bands. They may come out and play their music, but it's music from 20 or 30 years ago. His latest concert, and his latest couple of albums, there's so much about loss and grief and aging. Many of the women talked about, we grow as he grows, we evolve as he evolves. Even though a number of the women in our studies were young, but there were definitely those kind of in their 50s, 60s, 70s, even up to 80, who kind of felt like they had grown up alongside him, with him as a companion. And I think that's so important. And he's done so many different things. You mentioned Pete Seeger before. I don't know if you're familiar with Springsteen's Seeger Sessions album, that, people at different points along the way, they gravitated to different kinds of things. My co-author is British, and she's probably about 10 years younger than I am. And she talked about coming to Bruce when nobody else around her had any interest in him in England. And again, the kind of evolving. She likes to talk about the evolution and the growing with him. Even if the other people around her were like, who's that?
I listened to
Bruce
the
Springsteen.
podcast
Yes.
when she was talking about discovering him in the backseat of the car on her way to school one morning.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
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 I love that image. I love that
Yeah,
image of her in the back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lorraine, before we wrap up here, I have one technical writing question. As I said, we love to have authors on the show. We have lots of closet authors out there trying to get published. You mentioned your co-author, Donna Luff. What is it like working with a co-author? I mean, a lot of times people do a book and there's somebody in the background that gets recognized in the opening credits. But would you recommend having a co-author in a book, or is it only these nonfiction books with a lot of research that require it?
So I've done 2 books in my life. The first one was Daughters, Dads, and the Path Through Grief, Tales from Italian America, with, I know this sounds ridiculous, another Donna DiCello from New Haven. And this one, and both of them were what I call crossover books. They were definitely founded in research, but they're definitely also for a general audience. And I think these kind of books, it is really nice to have a co-author. I'm not sure I could have done either of these without Donna or Donna. I can't imagine how you would do that in another kind of book, that would be other than a purely academic book.
Sure.
So this is like kind of in the middle between books for just regular lay people and books for academic. I can't imagine how you would do that for something like a novel or some kind
Sure,
of
yeah.
fiction. But
Okay.
I've loved it. I've loved it. I'll just say that.
Lee, I'm going to serve the ball on your court to finish up with our final question to Lorraine. Lorraine, this has been so much fun.
Just like the old
And,
days, right?
Like the old days. I'm going to be back on the East Coast here at the end of August, and let's try and bend an elbow.
Sure. Yeah.
Lee, where shall we finish?
Oh, goodness. Well, Lorraine.
I should have asked you to finish with some poetry.
Oh gosh, I know I could have done that. I could have read one of the poems that my husband wrote.
Ooh,
One of those that.
next week. You're on the
maybe we
hook
can do
now.
that maybe we can do that
All right,
next week.
bring it for next week's show.
I'll do it next week. It has not been a busy book week for me. I've had meetings at the Art Center. We're getting ready for our Festival of Trees and reviewing how our summer camps kids went. And I'm having some minor surgery tomorrow to remove what I know y'all always suspected, a loose screw. It's in my ankle. And one of 12, and I spent more time in pre-op yesterday than it's going to take to remove the screw tomorrow.
Always.
Yikes.
So that's
All right.
so there hasn't been much book stuff this week. Next week.
Be
will
well.
better.
We'll be thinking. We'll be praying for you.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. That's it. Another episode of the Rare Book Cafe, the Coffee Book Edition, the Book Lovers Rendezvous. Whew. Thank you, Dr. Lorraine Mangione, my co-host Lee Linn. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you
You
so
You
much.
can find us
Thank you so
on
much.
YouTube, on Facebook, or wherever good podcasts are given away for free.